A lot of people coming to this program, though, are in the middle of transition. Some are in relationship transition. Some are in like a transition of life, like their kids just left the house or something like that. I would say, though, a majority of people are in a career recalibration or transition. So they're either in a career and they're like, I want to do something different. I'd like to figure out what's next, or I can't do this anymore. I've got to change trajectory. So a lot of this career questioning has been coming up around, okay, I know how I'm wired. What career should I be on? What path, what vocation should I go toward? And so we're talking to a lot of people in transition, and we're assuming you, if you're listening right now as an ISTJ, you're probably also thinking about career. You're thinking about what comes next. Am I on the right track in my life? And so we want to talk about that today.
Well, and on top of that, there is a lot of influence our careers have on us. So even if a person is listening with ISTJ preferences and they're perfectly fine with their career and they've been doing it for 2 decades and they don't have any interest in leaving, it might be interesting to find out how your career has impacted and affected the way that your type shows up.
Yeah.
Because not only does our type influence the career we choose influences how our type manifests. And we spend 40 hours plus a week at this place, right? Doing problem solving, pouring everything we have into it if we're still passionate about it, or at least we have to be diligent.
Yeah.
And that attunes us to certain activities and ways of thinking. And so a part of this podcast isn't just what career should you choose, or if you're in a transition, or, just being, curious about a path, but it can also sate the curiosity about, well, has my career itself altered how I'm showing up as a person?
Yeah. So it's not just prescriptive. It can be descriptive of your journey as an ISTJ.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about what the internet says about ISTJ careers.
Okay.
Does that sound good? I prepared. I brought the ISTJ listening is going to be really proud of me that I have a list that I prepared for, and I've got information to share.
Everybody loves a good list.
So I went out to the internet and I did just some general research. I basically asked Google and the internets, plural, what are the careers that are often talked about, the stereotypical careers for ISTJs. So I have a top 10 list here of what the internet sent back to me. Now, you as an ISTJ may or may not resonate with this, but let's just see. And some of these are, some of our stereotypes or things you'd imagine based on what we know about personality type. Okay. Number 1, accountant. Is that a surprise to you, Antonia? Probably not. That this is what the internet says. I'm not saying this. The internet says this.
Okay.
This is anecdotal. 2, financial analyst, financial analyst, lawyer, engineer, IT manager, human resources manager, project manager, law enforcement officer, military officer, or operations manager. Again, that's just a general list. And if you were to search, you'd probably find career advice for you as an ISTJ. You should probably pursue one of these types of careers or jobs.
Yeah. These lists aren't bad. We've been doing quite a few of these podcasts featuring different types, and that's not a bad list. I would say, though, that it is most likely going to resonate with a fairly stereotypical view of an ISTJ, or an ISTJ that, really resonates with the usual descriptions and profiles. We're going to come at this subject a little differently, though.
Yeah.
Our friend, Dr. Dario Nardi, has recently, over the last year or so, started to talk about this idea of what he is now calling subtypes, even though he was reluctant to call them subtypes. He wanted to originally call them flavors. And the reason why he wanted to call them flavors, or these different variations of each of the types, is because this is more of the nurture component to how type manifests.
Yeah.
So our personality type, in this case ISTJ, that seems to be pre-wired into a person. What our type preferences are, that's more nature, it appears. The best information we have at this point is that we come pre-wired with that. But there is a nurture component. And the nurture component means that over a lifetime, we can alter and shift our subtype or our flavoring of our type, depending upon the circumstances we find ourselves in and the training that we do and the career we choose.
Yeah.
And so we want to talk about ISTJ careers, not just in the more stereotypical version, but also with the different variations of ISTJs, and what a person who has ISTJ preferences but might not look like the cookie cutter version or the stereotype,
Yeah.
what kind of careers they might be interested in.
Yeah, and one of the resources I'd direct you to, if you're an ISTJ, we recorded an interview. We have multiple recordings on ISTJs. I got one on giving you ISTJ advice from many years ago, an audio podcast. And we also have an audio podcast interview with Antonia, who has ISTJ preferences.
Mm-hmm.
She's an interior designer and photographer. And I would say that she is a very unique styled ISTJ that falls outside of the stereotypes you read about online. And we're going to talk about maybe why that is as we go through these expressions. So two things I'd encourage you to think in terms of. We're going to talk about this in a principled way. So we're not going to give you like, you should go do this job as an ISTJ or this career. We're going to give you some principles to think about because there's all sorts of flavorings of ISTJs. And when I say flavorings, what I mean is almost imagine ISTJ is a song written out in paper, like the musical notes of a song. And these 4 expressions we're going to talk about are the performances of that song. So we're still talking about you're an ISTJ. That's how you're wired. That's how you make decisions, learn information. All those things still hold true. But how do you express that? What are the things that you're interested in, the values, the interests you have, all of that?
Right. So we'll give descriptions of each of these subtypes and talk about the careers that they find themselves attracted to or what they really excel at.
Yeah.
And if you are new to type, if you've just discovered you have ISTJ preferences and this is sort of new information for you, I think you'll be able to self-assess which of these subtypes you fall into just through the descriptions. But if you are a type geek, we'll also go into the more the deeper layer of it.
Yeah.
If you want to watch or listen to a full podcast on the concept of subtypes, we recorded it with our friend Dario not that long ago. So please feel free. We'll post a link. You can go listen to or watch that episode talking about how the concept of subtypes work. And it's based on work from Dr. Helen Fisher around neurotransmitters and a little bit borrowed from Socionics Victor Galenko, mostly the names of the subtypes, and a couple other resources. And it emerged by Dario looking at the results of EEG, machine testing, and discovering that a person of the same type can have multiple different ways or basically brain patterns that they favor depending upon things like their career choice.
So this is through observation. Dario had people come into his laboratory, go ahead and confirm ISTJ preferences, and then he would look at the brain patterns, the 4 different brain patterns that would show up, and he organized it based on an ISTJ or a sample size of ISTJs falling into one of these 4 brain patterns.